Good afternoon, everyone, and I guess to those who may be on the West Coast or in other time zones, it might still be late morning for you, but glad you're all here with us. As we have such a timely topic today of the things to consider and the process, I guess, of transitioning from being a student to being successful as a professional. So, this time of year, probably many of you as students are finishing up, what you need to do on your semester, but very shortly, I imagine you're going to be in a situation where you're going to be preparing and getting ready, and really, I guess, you're preparing now. So good for you on thinking about what you need to do to make this transition and be really effective in your new career or even in an internship environment. So welcome, and it will be a great topic, a great time today. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Deanna Laird, and I kind of head up our university services here at Accounting Fly. And we're really excited to partner with Andrew Argue here, host of the Bean Counter. If you don't know or if you're not familiar with his site and all the information he has, you need to check him out. I mean, it's just fantastic information. And I guess really we're both in the mission of, helping, prepare people to be successful in accounting careers. So this is a great partnership. And Andrew, I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for being here. And it's going to be, if any of you have listened to him before, a very exciting speaker, and you'll be probably very engaged. And I want to really encourage you all to stick around throughout the whole session. Andrew's planning on asking for some feedback, I believe, at the end to get your pulse and such, and he'll talk a little bit more about that. Okay, so before I hand it over to Andrew, just a couple of reminders. We have opportunity to have a Q&A session throughout this webinar, and there is a question panel on the right-hand side, most likely. It may be at the bottom of your screen if you're on a mobile device, but look for a question panel, and in that panel, you have the capability of typing in text, okay? So use that to pose what you would like me to ask Andrew at the end of the session, all right? And we'll get as many of them answered as we can throughout before we have to leave, all right? So, utilize that capability. Let us know what's on your mind, and then we'll try to answer and get you the information you want. And then one other thing I want to do before we start off the webinar is just want to remind you all about if you haven't signed up with Accounting Fly, do so. If you haven't found a position yet, use Accounting Fly. Use all your resources available, but make sure that you include Accounting Fly as an option for helping you match up to that right position for you, okay? There's a lot of additional information on there, our blog. We have some other expert advice in helping you prepare for your career. So, so go on there, check it out. And also, as I mentioned, check out the Bean Counter. Some really great information there as well. So, hearing more directly from Andrew, I'm going to hand it over to you, okay? And thanks. I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Thanks, Deanna. Everybody go ahead and say thank you to Deanna in the little question or chat box that you have over there. It takes a lot of work to organize these webinars and get everything sort of situated. So go ahead and thank her. And thank you, Deanna, for having me. I'm excited. And I'm excited to help everybody out with something that's one of my favorite topics. I used to give this presentation a few years ago. I would travel around to conferences across the United States with Beta Alpha Psi. When I was working at PwC, I'd go to these conferences and I'd talk about the transition from student to professional. And then it was kind of really exciting for me because I was really in the thick of, just starting out at PwC, and I was sort of right in the middle of that transition. So I was speaking about it from that perspective. Now I can talk about it from where I'm at now, and I'm excited to, share my thoughts and give some insight. So we're going to talk about 8 different topics, and before we get into that, I want to tell you a little bit about why, why should you listen to me about this, the transition from student to professional. What did I do? What's my story and background? What am I, what is my perspective? How did it get created based on my experiences? So when I was in university, just to give you a little bit of background, I was the president of Beta Alpha Psi. I did that for a year, I believe. I was also some other positions like vice president. I also got a master's degree in accounting and an undergraduate degree in accounting. I had about a 3.4-ish GPA. I'm not even 100% sure what my GPA was, but it was somewhere in that range. I passed the CPA exam before I started working. We're going to talk about that in a second. It took me about 7 months, and I even failed auditing, believe it or not, which is kind of ironic because I actually became an auditor. But that was the one section I ended up failing. And this is the thing that I'm really proud of, and I think really makes me a good speaker for this topic and someone who can share some important pieces of advice with you, is that when I got my job at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big 4 firms, in my first year, I was able to get a 1 rating. And they do like a rating scale for people on a rating scale of 1 to 5. 1 being, the top, 5 being, we're going to be thinking about letting you go from the company. And I was able to get a 1 rating both years I was there. My first year, I got a 10% raise, $2,500 in bonuses. Second year, I got that same 1 rating, got a 19% raise, and $3,500 in bonuses. And that was so interesting for me because I heard so many people when I was a kid and even when I was in college talking about how they would get these 3 to 4% raises every year. And I didn't really think much about it. And then all of a sudden, boom, I got my first sort of raise and bonus. And I was like, geez, this is like a lot higher than what I was expecting. And you can only take your starting salary and multiply it by 10 or 20% so many times, and it starts to become a very, very large number. So that was something that I was really excited about. And then I quit PwC, and I started the Bean Counter, and I started a number of other businesses as well, including 10 Key Heroes. And I went out on my own. So if you're interested in passing the CPA exam, being a top-rated person at whether it's a company, a firm, a governmental organization, getting the highest bonuses, getting the highest raises, or even starting your own business, those are all things that I can sort of help you out with in this transition from being a student to being a professional. So Deanna, I know we have a polling question, and this I think would be a good place to go ahead and start. I want you to answer this polling question. It's basically, where are you in this process? Are you currently a student, or are you currently a professional? Now, if you're graduating in May, just go ahead and put professional, and if you're going to be looking for your full-time job. But if you're still a student, you've got another year, you've got another 2 years, go ahead and put student. So Deanna, can we go ahead and run that poll? Oh, Deanna, are you there?
It's up and running, Andrew, and we have about 80%. So I'm going to go ahead and close it because we have a large percentage.
Cool.
And I will launch it for you to see. There you go.
Okay, I couldn't actually see the results, but what did we get there for the numbers?
Oh, okay. Well, the results are 49% student and 51% professional.
Perfect. So we've got a nice little mix there. So I'll be able to cover both sides of it. And yeah, I mean, I'm going to be giving you some advice today. And we're going to start out with, basically what I would do if I was still in school. And we're going to talk about 3 things. And then we're going to talk about 5 things that I would do if you're a professional. And when you're in school, the very first thing I want you to think about, is to pass the CPA exam. I'm not talking about going out and finding a job. I've done other webinars on that topic. There's a bunch of stuff on my YouTube page. Done a webinar with Accounting Fly, how to get hired by Big 4 firms. Today we're not really talking about the job hunt process. Obviously everybody knows you got to find a way to make a paycheck and you got to find a way to pay off all those student loans, but we're really not covering that today. Today we're talking about all the other things. And one of the first things I want you to be thinking about when you're still in school is, how can I pass the CPA exam before I'm working? We're going to talk about that in a second. I want you to do something that is going to make you a remarkable individual, something that's going to make you stand out from the rest. That's going to help you, obviously, in the job hunt process, but when you go into the firm, I don't want people just thinking you're another person coming in the door. I want them to be excited about who you are. We'll talk about that a little bit. And then I want you to dream, and this I'm really excited about. At the end of this webinar, I'm going to be giving away some cool prizes, so make sure you stick around. And it's related to you sharing a little bit about what your dreams are. I won't say much more about that right now, but when we get to the very end of the webinar, you'll see what I mean. So stick around, and you could win some cool stuff. Now, once you start, this is what I'm going to be talking about once you actually start at the company. And so for that 50% of you that are already there, this is really going to be important. And then it'll be important for everybody else when you finally do start your professional career. The first thing is to never compromise. Now, I'm not going to talk too much about that right now. You'll kind of see what I mean about that later. It's not exactly what you might think. And then I want you to be a curious individual. I want you to be enthusiastic, and I don't want you to be weird. And I'm going to go into each of those, and then I've also got a bonus one at the end. So the very first one, I want you to pass the CPA exam. I mean, this is such a huge thing, and I've got this quote here, KYFHD, and I heard this from a guy named Michael Kramer. He's an ex-Apple retail CFO. Everybody knows those hugely successful Apple retail stores. KYFHD stands for Keep Your Effing Head Down. And, you know, I heard that quote at the best time. I was sort of, you know, in Beta Alpha Psi, going through the recruiting process, and I wanted to, you know, really enjoy my life. In college, it's tough because there's so many distractions. You know, there's, if you're a guy, there's girls. If you're a girl, there's guys. There's, you know, alcohol. There's, you know, parties and all that. But I really had a low GPA. I needed to get to work. I needed to keep my head down. I needed to get more involved, get more work experience. And that's really what you need to do with the CPA exam. Passing the CPA exam is perhaps, before you start working, is perhaps the biggest single determiner of whether or not you're going to be a high-rated individual in your first year. I mean, I hate to say that, but the people that have to work busy season hours, right, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, and then they have to go home, and then they have to study for 3 to 4 hours. I mean, it's insane the kind of stress they're putting on themselves. They come in the next day beaten down. I mean, you can see it in their eyes. It's just they're withering away as individuals. But if you've already passed the exam like I did, I mean, I passed 3 or 4 months before I started, boom, every single day when I went home, I mean, I could relax, you know, watch Netflix, get a little meal, drink a beer, you know, whatever I wanted to do at the end of the day. I could relax, I could unwind, I could enjoy, you know, my girlfriend at the time, which is now my wife. And, you know, that it just makes a huge difference when you come in every day not having to have spent all night studying. You know, to pass the CPA exam, you need a review course. Anybody that thinks they can do it on their own, you know, there's a few geniuses out there. I'm sure they could do it. I'm not one of them, and most of you aren't going to be either. So get a review course and get on a plan to finish in 6 months. You know, a lot of people think, oh, the CPA exam, you know, you can take it and you have to pass all 4 sections in 18 months. If your plan is to pass in 18 months, you're dead in the water. You should have a plan to pass in 6 months. That way, if you fail a section or you fail 2 sections, look, you got a whole year of buffer time, so don't stress out. I tried to pass it in 4 months. I failed a section, and then there was some gapping in the windows or whatever. And I think the total time it took me to pass was about 7 months. But getting it done before you start, like I said, it's the biggest difference. I mean, when I started in public accounting and I was competing against these people, it was like, it wasn't comparable. They just weren't able to compete. They weren't able to be happy every day. They weren't able to be excited because they had this exam weighing around their neck like an albatross. Not to mention, my very first 2 weeks at the firm, I cashed a $5,000 check for the bonus, and they're having to go home every day study for the CPA exam. I mean, it's just a slap in the face. So you got to get this thing done before you start working. That is number one. Number two is be remarkable. And I'm going to share a couple stories with you about what I mean, but a couple quotes I like: do what others don't do. So many people out there, everybody that's on this probably went to college, right? You probably are going after that bachelor's in accounting and the 5th year, the master's in the CPA. Everybody's doing that. So it's a given. It's not exciting to me. I'm not interested in your, all of that. You want to meet the minimum requirements. That's what you have to do. But what are you doing to stand out, to be an individual that people remember? Some examples of what I was able to do. I was able to be the president of Beta Alpha Psi. I won a number of Deloitte Best Practices speech competitions, so national speech competitions, any of those tax or auditing and accounting or speech competitions related to accounting, all of those are phenomenal for standing out and being a remarkable individual. If you can get some relevant work experience, not a lot of people work for a year or 2 years in an accounting position before they start their, quote, full-time career. Now, I was able to do that. I worked for a year during my master's. So I was taking my master's, working on the CPA, working full-time, 40 hours in an accounting position. And once I started working, hey, I'd already been coming into the office, every morning for a year. I knew what it was like. I knew how to handle office politics. I knew how to handle all of the, difficult things with starting to work. You take me, who did an internship, who did a year of working at a company, and then you put me into first year of public accounting versus someone who hasn't passed the CPA exam, doesn't have, never did an internship, doesn't have any work experience. I mean, they're coming in sandals. They don't know what's going on. There's a lot that goes into working in an office every day. It's a big transition for being a student. So getting some relevant work experience in accounting, it's going to make a huge difference. I mean, there's other things you can do. You got to get creative. I mean, one guy reached out to me and said, "Hey, Andrew, I'd love to write a post on the bean counter. Would you be interested in having me do that?" And so he told a little bit about his story. He had a really great story. His name is Julian. He may be listening on this. I'm not sure. And, you know, that was awesome. You know, that was very cool, and I was excited about that. And so if you're interested in writing for the bean counter or going concern or accounting fly, I mean, reach out. Do something different that you can put on your resume, a story you can tell in the interview process, and a story you can tell when you start full-time. It's exciting. And again, I'm not talking about your GPA or your, you know, bachelor's. Everybody's got to do that. This is not, I'm not talking about the CPA. I'm not talking about, you know, a restaurant job. I think restaurant jobs are great. All jobs are great. You know, you can bring in some money while you're in school, hopefully keep you out of debt. But I'm talking about things that are different, things that will make you stand out. You need to find something that works for you. And the last one is, for when you're still in school, is to dream. Most people die when they're 25. We just don't bury them until they're 75. Think about that. And one of the reasons I started the bean counter is because I think this is just so true for so many people in accounting. They have these huge dreams. Everybody's pumped and excited. They're enthusiastic when they're coming in as a bachelor's. They're an intern. You know, they're excited for their career. And then they just get beaten back in the first year of graduating. For most of us, the danger is not in setting our goal too high. It's missing it and aiming too low. It's missing it and aiming too low and achieving it. And that is so true. I mean, so many of you are capable of things that you can't even imagine, but the biggest limiting factor and the biggest thing holding you back is your inability to believe that you can. And having a big dream that you're excited about is going to be, it's going to be very important in keeping you motivated. When you first started in college, you were a freshman, right? I mean, I didn't play college sports, you know, but you probably, if you've seen a picture of me, you're like, well, that makes sense. He's not the muscly guy. But I didn't play college sports, but I knew a lot of people that did. And when they were a freshman or redshirt, I mean, they're at the bottom of the barrel, right? And when you're at the bottom of the barrel, people pick on you. They play pranks on you. They make you wash the laundry. They make you wash the jock straps. I mean, they make you do tough things. And it's a tough transition going from being a senior in high school, top of your class, you know, winning all these, you know, athletic awards and everything, to then going a redshirt freshman, right? Well, it's the same thing when you start working. And what's your motivation when you're a redshirt freshman? Well, you know eventually you want to win that big championship. You know eventually you want to have some major success. You want to win some competitions. You want to win some games. If you don't have a big dream guiding your professional life, a reason why you're putting up with all the crap in the first year, the first 2 years, maybe the first 3 or 4 years, depending upon what you choose, it's going to be hard for you. Your soul can be broken by certain individuals because in the beginning, you may not have that much control over what you're doing. So I want you to come up with a dream, something that you're going to be willing to sacrifice for, something that matters to you. And I'm going to, think about it right now. We're going to come back to this at the end of the webinar. Some examples might be how much money you want to make, work-life balance. Maybe you want to travel the world. Maybe you want to travel the world with a company. I know people that have worked in Australia, Brazil, Asia, China. Obviously, China is in Asia. I didn't mean to mistake those. Sometimes they get those people on YouTube that are like, haha, he thought Asia was a state. No, I'm aware. But London, Ireland, I've seen people work in all those places. If that's a goal of yours, that's cool. Paying off debt, that's something that I've written a good post about up on the Bean Counter blog, a newsletter that'll go out tomorrow. Owning your own CPA firm, being a major business executive, what is the why? What is the reason that you chose accounting? What is your big picture goal? You may not accomplish it in a year. You may not accomplish it in 2 years. And the truth is, you may not even know what it is right now. Some of you are probably sitting there like, oh crap, I don't know what I want to be. I don't know who I am, why I'm doing this. But what I will tell you is to pick one. Pick one for now, and it's going to change. I mean, it's changed for me a number of times. But once you get on a plan working towards that goal, people in motion tend to find things out. When you're working towards something big, other opportunities will come to you that you didn't even know previously existed. But if you don't have that big picture plan, and you get into work and someone's asking you to scan documents, pick up coffees, pick up lunch, pick up dinner, and they're asking you to get your work done on top of that, and guess what? All your work is wrong, and you've got 20 review notes on your work papers because you're a first year. I mean, it's tough to take some of that stress unless you have a bigger picture in mind. But if you have a bigger picture in mind, you can roll with the punches. You're willing to sacrifice and give up for the bigger picture. Okay, so those were the 3 things that I wanted you to think about if you're still a student, okay? And, the dreaming applies to you if you're a professional as well, but really when you're a student, I want you to try to solidify these things in your mind. Now I want to talk about things you can do once you start working in your first job. This is for the other 50% of you and the rest of you that are still in college. And the first one is never compromise. What do I mean by that? You cannot build a dream on a foundation of sand. To weather the test of storms, it must be cemented in the heart with uncompromising conviction. You must plant your feet in the ground so deep and so firm that the world starts to orbit around you. Don't compromise on the big picture of your life. I mentioned this earlier, that so many people get into the first year of their career and they start to think, oh, college was the best time of my life. And you know what? It's over. It's in the rear view. Now it's crappy corporate life, 8 to 10 hours a day, lower pay than I think I deserve, blah, blah, blah. And you can't do that. You can't compromise on your goals and your dreams. Now, what I'm not saying is don't do things you don't want to do. Sometimes there's always things we don't want to do. I don't particularly love brushing my teeth. I don't know what it is. Even when I was a kid, it's probably because I got that beaten into me when I was a kid. I didn't like brushing my teeth. There's always things you don't like to do. I personally, when I was working at PwC in public accounting, I did not love doing the really technical accounting stuff. I loved doing a lot of the work, but there were just certain areas where I was like, oh man, I really don't care about this. But I had a bigger picture in mind. When I worked at PwC, I wanted to be a partner. I wanted to be a partner before I was 30. And so everything in my mind was orienting around that goal. And I was willing to get dinner. I was willing to scan stuff, but I wasn't willing to give up that dream as long as it was my dream. And I wasn't willing to just say, oh, it's too big or it's too little. While I had that idea cemented in my mind, I was not willing to compromise on that. No matter how many people told me, oh, Andrew, even though you started when you're 21, 9 years, you won't be able to do it. Or 15 years, you won't be able to do it. It can never happen. And, I just didn't let that affect me. I didn't compromise on my bigger picture. And because of that, I was able to do all this grunt work. You can never compromise your dreams regardless of any grunt work it takes. And that was the mindset I had, and I want you to have that mindset early on. You need that big picture, and then don't compromise on it. Going back to what I said before, it can change. It changed for me, right? I didn't become a partner at PwC, even though that's what I wanted. A new dream changed for me. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to own my own business. And so my dream changed, and then I was willing to, even though I just got promoted, quit my job. Even though I just moved on to a new client, even though I just got a raise, quit my job and have no salary and go through all that grunt work because it was part of my bigger picture. I had a new dream, and I didn't compromise for it. I'll tell you a little story in regards to this idea of not compromising either, and you'll sort of see what I'm getting at. When I first started at the firm, I worked on a couple clients, really loved it, was super excited and pumped about what I was doing, and then I got onto this client I was supposed to work on for 6 months. And when you've been working somewhere less than a year, 6 months is like an eternity, right? And I got on the job, and I didn't really like the people. They were a little, I hate to say it, they were a little lazy, okay? They were the kind of people that would sort of get in around 10 a.m., they had a foosball table in the office, which for a lot of you may be cool, right? But for me, I'm the kind of guy that wants to get in around 7:30 a.m., just go nuts, like knocking out work like crazy, and then leave around, 6:30 or something like that. Even during busy season, maybe 7 o'clock, that would be nice. If I got in early, I should be able to leave early. Well, they were the kind of people that would get in around 10, play foosball or whatnot, and then stick around till like 1 in the morning. And I was just like, I can't handle this. I also wasn't really excited about the industry that the client was in. And I was like, wow, I just started, but 6 months on this thing, I just can't do it. There's no way. I don't want to be a part of this. And that was something that was really important to me. And so rather than just say, oh, well, this is working, it's my first year, I just have to do what they say, no, I was not willing. That was something that was important to me. I didn't want to spend 6 months of my life doing something that I hated. And so over the next week or two, I went into HR and just sort of catch up, talk about how busy season's going. I spoke with my coach, my mentor, talked about how busy season's going, how everything was going. So grateful to have this position. I'm really enjoying it so far. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. The only thing I'd say is that while I've loved a lot of the clients I've worked on here, I'm just not super excited about this client. And, the team and the vibe just doesn't really mix well with me. And, if there's anything I could do to, maybe be put onto another engagement, I would be so grateful for that. And, instead of spending 6 months on that job, I spent 6 weeks on that job, and I was able to get rotated off onto my favorite client of all time. And if I never would have brought that up, if I never would have believed that, something out there that there was something out there that I didn't want to do, and other people would move for me, if I never asked, if I never told anybody, then it wouldn't happen. So you have to have dreams. You have to know how to get there, and don't let anybody take you off that path. I knew that if I worked on that client for 6 months, I would not be able to stick around and make partner. I would get miserable. They would break me. And I wasn't willing to let that happen. So I did anything I could to get out of it and stick with the goal and stick with the dream. The next one on here, and you know, when I used to give this presentation, I was just starting out at the firm, and so I was in the very early stages of that transition. Now, looking back and having worked in public accounting for a few years and starting my own company, one of the biggest pieces of advice I tell people now is to find a partner that you love that makes you better. And I'm not talking about a partner at the firm. I'm talking about a romantic lover. You know, my wife supports me in taking risks. She supports me in the politics of the company. And really the most important thing that she does, for me, if it's a wife, for you it could be a husband, you know, and if you're really not interested in it, you've got to find somebody who can play this role for you. She tells me what I needed to hear, even though it wasn't always the easiest or the most fun thing. I mean, she stood up for the best in me, even when I didn't want to hear it or even when I didn't want to do it. And, you know, I think I've done a pretty good job at, you know, making the transition from student to professional, as you saw at the beginning. One of the things I didn't mention, I also got promoted early to senior associate. At PwC, I got promoted in 2 years. It typically takes people 3 years at PwC. And, you know, I made great money, as I showed you, with the raises and the bonuses. I've been able to make this successful transition to out working on my own. And all of that, I mean, I really don't think I could have done that with my wife. And so one of the biggest pieces of advice I tell people now is to find someone who can be that partner with you. Think about this. Think about it this way. If you're going to be married to someone someday, you know, in our culture now, a lot of people get married later in life, like 30s, and I think that's because the cost of living has gone up. But let's say if you're going to marry somebody when you're 35, and they're going to be the love of your life, right? Wouldn't it be great to spend an extra 10 years with that person at 25? And not to mention, you'll get all the benefits of having that person around, all the benefits that I'm telling you about right now. So if I were in your shoes, I was taking my life seriously, and I mean, obviously, the reason I marry my wife isn't because I want to be successful professionally. It's because I love her as an individual, right? We have a personal relationship. That's where most of the relationship resides. But if you just look at the professional side of your life, I mean, you got to get hitched. That's the way I look at it. I mean, it really helps elevate your success and take it to the next level. So take it seriously. Think about it. You know, chew on that over the weekend and think, am I taking steps to find a partner that loves me and that is willing to stand up for the best in me? And something to think about. Okay, so I want to talk about the next 3 things, and these next 3 things are things that I want you to take into work every single day that you're there. And this is how I got promoted early. This is how I was able to get the 1 rating, and the 1 rating, just to give you an idea, only about 5% of people get that 1 rating in the firm. I think it was like 4 or 5% of people at the firm. And a lot of times they didn't even give it to people who were in their first year. So it was very unlikely that I would have gotten it, and I did. So I'm very proud of it. And this is exactly how I did it. These are the principles that guided my behavior and actions when I was there. So with enthusiasm, if you don't have your why, if you have your why, this shouldn't be a problem, right? If you know why you're there, you have that big dream, that big goal, you should be enthusiastic because every day you're working towards that bigger picture. I mean, I walked in ready to go nuts every day. And I was ready to knock out work papers. I was ready to be on client calls. I was ready to solve problems for people. I was ready to volunteer for events, community service. I was willing to volunteer for client proposals. I was willing to volunteer for new clients, challenging clients. I mean, you gotta be enthusiastic about what's going on at the firm. When you lose that enthusiasm, you need to make a change. You need to try and do something. Like I talked about before, I was on that, you know, I was excited when I was going in the beginning. I mean, this is my career. I had my bigger picture. I knew what I wanted. And when I got on that client, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be here for 6 months. I was like, I got to change this. And so I did what I could to change it. But if you don't think, and you got to look at yourself honestly, and you can't just lie because it's hard, because a lot of times things are hard. You got to look at yourself honestly and say, is there anything I can do to change this? And if the answer is no and you're miserable, you need to quit. I don't care if you're 6 months in. I don't care if you're a year in or 2 years in. I don't think you should be spending 6 months even, or a year, or 2 years, certainly not 2 years, I mean, that's insane, of doing something that you hate. You shouldn't. So I don't even care if it's your first 6 months, your first year in public accounting. Some people say, give it 2 years, try it out. If you don't like it, move on. No. You need to do something that you love. You need to do something that fits into your bigger picture that you're excited about, because the company's not even going to want you there anyway. You're going to be one of those people that when you quit, everyone's going to be like, thank goodness, because we'd have had to fire them because there's no way they're getting promoted. If you're not excited when you go in every day, then there's really no reason to be working the job. You're hurting the company, and most of all, you're hurting yourself. So foster that enthusiasm based on the big dreams and bring that in every day. And when you're working on different engagements or different teams within the office and you have that high level of enthusiasm, it just brings in the right people. It brings in the big people in the firm. They want you on their job because they want that number one, that person that comes in that they can rely on to be that face, to be that communication with the client or the rest of the team, that person that is dependable, that never misses anything. You're going to be brought on for the best projects, and it will happen in a very short period of time. I mean, I would say it was probably 4 or 5 months, maybe even less, where I started to get like the number one opportunities within the firm, because people just knew, okay, hey, we need a first year, we need a staff. Who's it going to be? It's going to be this kid. And it's because I was coming in ready to rock every day. Okay, curiosity. So first one's enthusiasm, second one's curiosity. This one's huge. So I want you to get curious about all areas. Look, this is the career you're going into. You know, when you started, and go back to this sports metaphor, right? You're a redshirt freshman. You know, you're not even allowed to play. You're washing jock straps. You're putting ice together for the athlete, the real athletes that get to take a bath in it, or whatever it is that redshirts do. I obviously don't know. Someone who's a real athlete's probably laughing like, ha, that's not what it's like at all, you loser. Anyway, I want you to get curious. Just like that red shirt, I want you to learn. I want you to watch the best people on the team. I want you to see what they're doing, how they did it. What's the story of their success when you're sitting next to them on the bus and they're not, knocking you over the head? How did they get to be the best player on the team? Do they practice more? Did they learn? Did they get with a really good physical coach? I mean, whatever it is for that person. At the firm, it's the same thing. And I want you to get curious about all aspects. First off, the firm. The firm or the company has a ton of resources. They may have, I talk to people all the time that are getting these amazing opportunities to go and travel the world living in, I know one guy right now who I went to college with who's living in the UK, and he's traveling all throughout Asia for his company. And that was something that was really important to him. He wanted to go abroad and he wanted to travel. I mean, how cool is that? His company, it wasn't even a firm, it was a company, gave him that opportunity as an internal auditor. If you're at a firm, I mean, there's tons of stuff. There's all sorts of community service. There's all sorts of social events. There's all sorts of committees you can be on to plan events and activities. There's LGBT groups. I mean, there's so many different things you can get involved in with the firm. You need to get curious about it, and it'll help you orient your longer-term picture. If you're like, look, I am going to be working in Australia by 2017 or 2018, then that can be, put into your bigger picture. And so you need to learn about what's going on at the firm. Ask people about it. When people start talking about stories, push further and just ask questions and get curious. With clients, same thing. When you walk into a client's office, one of the first things you need to be looking for is, do they have any pictures on their desk? Who are the pictures of? Are they children? Oh, he's got a football from Tennessee on his desk. Maybe he's originally from Tennessee. Oh, you're from Tennessee? Oh, yeah. How long have you been down here in Florida? Oh, cool, very nice. And so did you move here after your kids graduated, or, whatever you can, get curious about the clients. Because when they call the senior manager and the partner and they say, you know what, we honestly loved Brianna. She was fantastic. She came out here. We really enjoyed her. And you know what, she got the audit done on time. And all it takes is that one little call, and boom, you're on the top of that senior manager or that partner's radar for the next 6 months or a year. And I even want you to get curious about the audit and tax methodology. I mean, look, I don't get that excited about this crazy, over-the-top accounting methodology that's out there. I liked financial accounting. I liked tutoring. I like cost accounting. I like intermediate accounting. I like basic auditing and taxes. All the stuff we learn in school. I really like that, to be honest. And that's kind of geeky, but I like it. But when you go into your firm or your company, you need to really learn what's going on. You need to learn the tax methodology that they're doing, because just being a charismatic individual, just being an excited and enthusiastic individual is not enough to cut it. You need to be reliable and dependable, and no one's going to send you out there to work on your own projects and give you your own teams and send you to other countries and send you on, the new, most prestigious proposals. They're not going to do that unless they think you've actually got a core understanding of what's going on. So even though I didn't love that stuff, I made sure that nobody really knew that it wasn't my favorite thing, and I made sure that I actually knew what was going on. And that is huge. So get curious about what the methodology is, what it is that you're doing. Not to mention, it's just going to make your life easy. I mean, if you were to throw me on an audit right now, I'd have no problem. I'd be able to look at the balance sheet, the income statement. I'd be able to organize the different audit areas. I'd be able to plan the tests. I don't care what firm you put me at. I can do it because I know. Yeah, it may not be my favorite thing in the world, but I can do it, and everybody knew I could do it, and everybody knew I could execute and deliver. And that's the kind of vibe you want to give off, and the only way to do that is when you're in meetings and you're in, planning meetings and all that stuff, you're making comments that show that you're a knowledgeable individual about what is actually going on. And the last area I want you to be curious about, and the most important, is the people. If you want to succeed, if you want to get a bonus or a raise or promotion, or you want to work overseas or whatever that goal is, it's amazing. Everybody's going to sit around in a room and they're going to say, okay, what do we think about Brianna? Do we think she's ready for this? And what you need to build is a consensus within the firm and within the organization. Everybody needs to have met you, know your face, know your name, and they all need to have a memorable, good experience of you. And the only real way that I know to do that is to make a little bit of a relationship with every single person. Whenever you're on the job with them, or whenever you're working on a project with them, stick around for an extra 5 minutes. And one of the things they mention about their kids, the family, the weekend, ask a couple more questions about it. Everybody that I used to work with, I knew if they had a wife, if they had a husband, I knew how many kids they had, I knew what their big goal was. Were they trying to pass the CPA exam? Were they trying to pass their next, last couple of master's classes? Were they trying to get on the #1 client in the firm? Were they trying to work in Australia? I knew what their big goal was because I took the time to ask. And when everybody sat around in a room and my name would come up, everybody just had sort of a good vibe about me. I mean, for the most part. I mean, there was always the occasional guy, like one guy that raised his fist to me when we were playing, what was it, foosball? But anyway, that guy wasn't making any decisions anyway. All the people that were making decisions, all the people, senior manager, partner, all those people, I knew what was going on in their life because whenever I was around them, I just took a few minutes to ask. And that was huge in terms of getting those promotions, bonuses, and raises. And the last one is don't be weird. I mean, you'd be surprised. Like, these are some basic things not to do. Like, look, I get romance, right? And I get that you're working with people for a lot of the time in these firms. And, you're working busy seasons, a lot of hours. But I don't want you to be dating the whole tax department, okay? Look, I sort of have like a general rule when I talk to people. I'm like, look, if you meet somebody at the company, you can't control love. You meet somebody, you want to give a shot at it, go for it. You need to go through the proper channels, but build that relationship with that person. I mean, heck, this could be a person you marry just because you work with them and you have some weird rule that says you can't be with them. Do it. But, okay, and maybe it doesn't work out. Maybe you need to date somebody else. But if you start to move on to the third person, I'm going to start to be like, okay, Brianna, what's going on here? We're on to the third or fourth relationship in the last 6 months in the firm. I'm going to start to have a problem with this. And people just start to talk, and you start to get known as that person rather than the person that I've been talking about up until this point that's crushing it, that's dominating, that knows all the audit methodology, that's got a good relationship with the clients. Like, you start to be known as the person who's been with the whole tax department or whatever. So stop that. Don't do it. Don't roll in around 10 a.m. I mean, I'm like a 7:30 in the morning guy. What's funny, like, I didn't even realize this until I started doing it, and I'm just kind of a morning guy in general. But I would get in every day before, like, people that I worked with. And because of that, like, nobody could ever say Andrew wasn't working because every single day I was the first one there. So if anybody ever said Andrew wasn't working, somebody else would be like, well, he's here every day before us, so ... I mean, so don't get in late. Don't be the last one there. I mean, if you don't want to be the first one there, you're not a morning person, no big deal. But I really recommend trying to get in early and get things going. I worked in Miami. Everybody got in around 10 a.m. It just drove me nuts. I mean, I was like, how do you guys get anything done? It's ridiculous. And I'm not even kidding about this next one. Don't make any donkey noises. I mean, I literally was working with a woman who, I don't know what was going on. This was like my first 3 months at the firm. She'd been there for like a year and a half, so I don't even know how she survived that long, frankly. But, we were sitting in this room, clients all around, and she's making these donkey noises. It's literally donkey noises. And I was just like, I didn't know what to say. And she was like putting her feet up on the desk and just very sort of, great behavior if you're sort of in like a hippie cafe, but when you're in like a public accounting firm and you're working with the clients, just bizarro things like that, just stay calm. Just stay calm, I want you to be yourself, but I just don't want you to do any type of inappropriate behavior. And that sounds like an extreme example, but I was there. That literally did happen. I mean, I want you guys to have fun out there, but I just don't want you to be known as a freaky or a weird individual. And this is the bonus one I talked about, and this is how I really wrapped everything up in a bow. I was an enthusiastic, curious individual. For the most part, I wasn't weird. I was really prepared. I passed the CPA exam before I started. I had my big picture dream in mind, my goal. And this is what I did to really put a bow on all that, so everybody else knew what I knew, which is that I was working hard, I was accomplishing a lot, I was excited about what I was doing. And here's what I did. The first thing I did was I asked for feedback. A lot of the larger firms and companies, they do a great job of this. They have a whole program where, hey, if you work on this job more than a week, then you need to get some written feedback, a couple paragraphs about the work that you did and how you performed and what you can improve at. A lot of companies don't do that. And I don't care if your company does do it or doesn't, you need to find a way to get feedback. And it needs to be real feedback. It needs to be sitting alone with the person that you reported to in a room, whether that be at lunch or maybe you say, hey, would you mind, can we take 5 minutes? I got a couple questions for you. You go into a conference room alone and you say, look, I just want to know from you if there's anything I could be doing better. It's really important to me that you're excited about the work that I'm doing, you're happy with the work that I'm doing, and is there anything I can do? I mean, I'm very open. I want the feedback early so I can make improvements and I can be better contributor to the job and to the company. So please, I mean, is there anything I can do better that you can think of? Interacting with clients, doing the audit work, anything I can do that can be better. And you need to make sure that when you get the feedback, whatever it is, good or bad, you listen to it, you don't fight, you definitely don't fight it, and whatever it is they say, you put that as a little nugget in your mind, and then you just squash that like a bug over the next 3 weeks. And hopefully you're still working with that person. I like to ask for feedback right in the middle of the engagement. And when you're still working with that person for the next 3 weeks, if they say, well, I'd really like to see you talk more to the client. Every single day you need to talk to the client for the rest of the engagement. I don't even care if you don't have anything to say. You just need to walk by when you're going to get a cup of coffee and stop in the office and check in on something that was requested or was asked of you or whatever, and make sure that that gets seen. And then at the end of the next 3 weeks, it's like, oh, well, when you ask for your final feedback when you leave the job, they're like, wow, you really turned it around. I saw you going in there and talking every day, and I really appreciate that. Ask for feedback so you know what to be better. Once you have that feedback in place, that sort of cements you as a solid individual at the firm, a solid, quote, employee. Then comes the next level. I prepared what I call a summary of contributions. So once I had my feedback, it was all written out. That was like, okay, Andrew's a solid auditor. We want to put him on engagements. He's good. The summary of contributions was a document I put together, about a 5-page PDF, and that had everything I did on top of my audit work, on top of my accounting work. It was, oh, I ran and led this community service event. I worked on this client proposal. I led a lunch and learn teaching the interns how to audit accounts payable. I went to recruiting events at 3 universities over the last 3 semesters. Whatever it was, I slowly over the time that I was there got involved in all these little tiny events. And you'd be surprised. You do 1 a month over the course of the year, that's 12 things. I mean, it's a lot of stuff to put in a little summary of contributions, and that's exactly what I did. I mean, I didn't go crazy, but I did about 10, 12 things, and in 2 years, that was a big list. I mean, I had like 20 things on this list of summary of contributions, and it was a little 5-page PDF, had pictures and images of the events that I attended or ran, and a little paragraph summarizing what I did. I mean, to be honest, nobody read it, but when you already had this solid feedback with all these really good ratings from everybody, and then you were like, wait a minute, this kid also put together a summary of contributions, like he's taking it seriously. He is going places. He is looking at this as an important step in his career, and that's how I was able to get promoted early. If I would have just relied on my crappy feedback that I didn't really ask anybody to put time into and never really pushed people to give me some really good feedback, and I didn't put together a summary of contributions, I might have just fallen into the pack as another one of the pretty good people at the firm. But this made me number one. This made me probably, I mean, I wasn't in the meetings, but I was in the top 4 or 5%, and I don't know anybody else that did this in my class. So I was probably the number one person at the firm. That's the way I think about it myself. I'm not trying to be cocky. I just think that, hey, nobody else really did that. The other thing I did is when I told specific people, and you got to be careful with this. You don't just want to run around and be like, I want to be a partner at the firm, because people start freaking out and being like, wow, you're delusional. Because the reality of it is most people don't get that. I didn't get that. So if I would have went crazy and told everybody in the world that was my dream, people would have laughed at me, they would have made fun of me, and it would have invalidated the seriousness of what I believed in, what I wanted. So I didn't tell anybody, but I told the right people. I told my coach, my mentor, I told HR, I said, one of my big goals is to get promoted to senior associate in 2 years. I'd rather do it in 2 years than 3 years. I've always done things early. I graduated high school a year early. I graduated college a year early. I'd like to get get this senior associate role a year early. And they said, that's great. We love that too. That's a great goal. But to be honest, the top partner in Florida, he's really against that. And just don't think, even though we're probably all going to be on board with you, he's going to say no. And so I emailed that guy about a week or two later, and I said, hey, would you mind next time you're in the office, I just took 5 minutes of your time? And he said, sure, I'll let you know when I'm in. A couple weeks later, I saw him around. I was like, hey, can I have that 5-minute meeting I asked you about? And he said, sure, come on in. And I just said, hey, I just want to talk to you for a few minutes. I've been talking with my coach, talking with HR about my goals. And one of the things I said is that I'd love to get promoted a little bit early at that 2-year mark. And everybody's been saying, we like you, we're excited about you, but, this top partner, he's really not going to be on board with that. And I said, and I understand. You might have been burned on this in the past, and that's totally believable, and I don't want it unless I deserve it. But let me ask you this. What would I have to do for you to sit back and say, Andrew, you proved me wrong. You know what? In 2 years, even though I thought this could never happen, I'd never be on board with someone getting promoted early, you deserve it, so we have to do it. And I don't want you to do it unless I deserve it, unless I earn it. But what would I have to do to be in the position to earn it? And he gave me a list of a couple things, and basically that's part of what I used to compile this webinar I'm giving you today. I did it. I knocked it all out. I was involved in all the events on top of my basic work, prepared that summary of contributions, proving that I did everything on the list that he asked me to do and that he demanded, and nobody could say no, and it was a done deal. And I was more nervous about it then than I am now, obviously, because it happened, but I put them in a position where basically I asked everybody, hey, what do I have to do to reach my goals? They said, hey, this is what you have to do. And I went above and beyond in all those areas, put that in paper, presented that, and it was done. And that is exactly how I made the transition from being a student to professional, and those are some of the nuggets I would share with you on how to do it. So you probably remember when we were talking about this in the beginning of the presentation, I mentioned it. We're going to be giving something away before we get to questions and answers. And I want you to go right now to thebeancounter.com/all-posts/dreams. And I want you to share. I put this post up last night knowing I was doing this webinar today, and one woman already snuck on there and added a little dream. But what is your dream? What is the thing, what's the reason, what's the big picture that you're working towards? I want you to share that in the comments. And if you do that, you'll be entered in to a prize for a full Roger CPA review course or a Big Four course, one of the ones I have, Get Hired by Big Four Accounting Firms, and a resume review. Even if you're already working and you already have a review course, go and share your dream there anyway. Come on. It's anonymous. Nobody will know who you are if you don't want to. I put your legitimate email in there. Only I'll be able to see it. And that way I can reach out to you if you are the winner. But I want you to go there right now, and I want you to tell me, what is your big dream? What is the big thing that you are working towards? Do you want to own your own CPA firm? Do you want to pass the CPA exam? Do you want to pay off a bunch of debt? Do you want to be a partner at Deloitte? Do you want to be the, do you want to work, as a major executive of a major corporation like McDonald's or something like that? What is the big dream? I want you to go there right now, and I want you to do that. And after you've done that, go ahead and put some questions in, and let's do some Q&A. And I'm excited to, answer some of the questions and thoughts that you have, whether you're a student and you have some questions or whether you are currently a professional. If you could help me out with any of the questions that are coming through, I'd love to answer them.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? I cannot wait to go and look at all the posts to see what the dreams are of everyone. That's going to be really fun.
Yeah, seriously, everybody's got to do that. I mean, look, we got about 120 people on this webinar. I want everybody doing it. If I don't see 120 there, I'm going to be disappointed. So please go over there right now. Doesn't take but a minute just to type something in. It's going to be exciting. I mean,
and it'll be fun for, I think, all of you to see what everybody else is posting, right? So it'll be fun.
What's important to your peers? It's going to be exciting.
That's right. That's right. Okay, so on to questions, and we do have some really good ones here. So about 10 minutes left, so I'm going to jump right in, Andrew, okay? And one person wanted to know that, if you didn't know, if you knew now what you didn't know then, before, and you had the ability to go back in time, what's the one thing that you would have done differently?
That's a good question.
Of course, you've been very successful, so maybe you wouldn't need to do anything differently.
No, I would definitely do things differently. I mean, look, when I started out in university, I was a little bit reckless in the early days. I mean, just to give you a little bit of background, I spent 2 years in a boarding school in Costa Rica, and it was a therapeutic boarding school for troubled teens, and I'm putting that in air quotes even though nobody can see that. And when I got out of that boarding school, I went straight to college. And so it was a big adjustment for me. And I spent the first couple of years of college really not doing anything. I didn't work a job. I did not, really get my grades in order. I think I finished the first year with like a 3.08. And, you know, I ended up really having to struggle as the classes got harder to get my GPA up there, and where I was able to compete for some of the best jobs. And so I think I would have got things in gear. And the biggest regret I have is not working full-time while I was in school and going to community college to reduce the amount of debt that I got. I mean, I got about $55,000 in student loans, which I actually just paid off this week. And I've got a post about that. It took me about 3 years, and I paid off about 90% of it in the last 15 months. There's a post on the blog about that right now, and I'll be sending an email out about it tomorrow. But my biggest regret is not working harder earlier on to keep that debt down. Because when you start working, you want to keep all that money. But for the last couple of years, I've been giving big chunks of it to Sallie Mae. Now, luckily and thankfully, I'm done with that. But you know, that would be my biggest regret, is not working harder earlier on and having to pay the price later.
Interesting. Okay. You know, going back to when you talked about the CPA and your advice to pass it, one person was curious about when you passed it exactly, when you took it and when you passed it. Were you an undergrad or were you a graduate student?
I was in my master's program. So I graduated with my undergraduate degree, and then I spent a year in my master's. And I was working 40 hours a week during that time, taking master's classes, taking about 12 hours at any given time. And I was taking the CPA exam on top of that. And I passed it in a 7-month time period during my master's degree. I studied about, let's say, 2 or 3 hours a night after work every day. Even if I was taking the classes were pretty easy at my master's degree. So I was sort of going through some CPA exam questions in the back. You know, I was always that kid in the back left corner class going through those CPA exam questions. And then on the weekends, I would study 8 to 10 hours a day. And I did that for, you know, about a month and a half for about a month for each section. And then, yeah, I failed one section, so I ended up having to retake it, and there was a gap window of time in there. So it took me about 7 months in total. But yeah, I did it during the master's degree.
Okay, very good, very good. So how often does it happen when someone who, you know, they don't have a great internship or maybe not even an internship at all? Do you think that they will be able to get hired by the Big Four?
Absolutely. Look, I mean, when you go to work for the Big Four, as an example, and this applies to the other top accounting firms as well, you don't have to have an internship. That is a huge myth. For every 15 people that work at these companies, 5 of them were interns and were always going to work there. Another 5 of them just got hired straight out of university. And another 5 of them worked at another company or another firm and then came in as an experienced hire. So a minority of people that work at those firms were interns. Majority of people were never interns. So, I mean, thinking that not having an internship holds you back, I mean, it's obviously great to have an internship, mainly because when you start working, you're just much more solid. Like you know what's going on, and you're able to hit the ground running, and you're not going to be just an average person coming in. You're going to be a top performer. That's what the internship does for you. Does it give you a much higher chance of getting a job? I mean, it's just a different track in my mind. It's the majority of people that go and work at the Big Four firms didn't do an internship.
You know, I'm going to take the opportunity to just say some advice I like to give about internships. The value of an internship is also just the knowledge that it gives you who's interning, you know, whether or not you like the job, the work, the type firm, the culture, et cetera, so that you can just make a more intelligent decision when you're making a full-time offer decision. So
yeah,
I wanted to add that.
No, I appreciate that. I totally agree. And, you know, I just want to say I'm looking at these comments. They're coming in. They're coming in. I think we've got about 20 or so comments. I want to see more. I see there's more people on this webinar. If you have not commented right now and you're listening to me say this, I'm watching you. I'm watching you. I know the email. I know you're not commenting, so I want to see your dream over there. So, okay, let's go through a couple more questions.
Okay. You know, with all the success that you had in your accounting career at a firm, what made you start your own business?
When I was in my master's degree, and right before I started full-time at PwC, there was about 3 months of time in between there, and I went and I took an internship in Singapore with a company called MyCube. Now, that company doesn't exist anymore. It was a startup company, a technology company, and they hired, I think, 35 interns from 20 different countries around the world. And I don't even know how I got this thing, because it was a technology company. I was like, it's a weird accounting major, right? But I sort of reached out and begged and pleaded with them and was really excited about the opportunity to live in Singapore. I've always loved Asia. And I got it. And so I lived for about 2 months in Singapore working at this company right before I started at PwC. And this was a startup organization. And I never worked for a startup company. Like, I'd never been around it. I've never really been around entrepreneurs until that point. But I really went there and got the itch. You know, they offered me a job there, but I mean, I was working at PwC. I had this whole track back home that I wanted to pursue. And so at that point in time, I really got this entrepreneurial itch. And I think that's the exciting time when you're in college is, yeah, you know, get some accounting experience, get an accounting internship, get a full-time accounting job, but work for another type of company if you want. Work for a startup company. That might be fun. I mean, so I would say get some well-rounded experience when you're in college because it can really drive your mindset later. And I just saw that environment when I was over there in Singapore, and I got the bug, I got the itch, and so I wanted to do it eventually. And you know, when I got promoted at PwC to senior, I always look at it, I say, okay, hey, I just got promoted. Do I want to stick around for the next promotion or not? Because for me, the pay it's a big, like, I like to get paid, don't get me wrong, but for me, the title and the experience was more important. And so if I wasn't going to make it to that next leg up, why stay another year? And I didn't want to wait 3 more years to become a manager. I knew that I was going to want to start my own business before then, and so that's when I made the jump.
Great. Okay, so I think people have been able to kind of figure out that you have a pretty outgoing personality. Got a couple of questions around that, you know. So, you know, someone mentioned that they're an introvert, and just wondering about, you know, do you need to be an extrovert to get ahead, or, you know, has your approach, did it come naturally to you, or did you have to force yourself? And if so, you know, when did your outgoingness and progressiveness become natural?
Yeah, no, you definitely do not have to be an extrovert to be successful. I don't believe that's true at all. I think that's just a bunch of hogwash. I mean, look, one of the main partners at the firm I started with was a major introvert. I mean, this was the kind of person, and I'm sorry if this is you in the audience, I'm not making fun of you, but for someone that moves at a little bit faster pace like me, this can be incredibly frustrating. You're standing in front of the person, and they're talking so slow, right? It's just very, very slow. And I'm just sitting there, I'm wanting to stick my hand into his mouth and pull the words out. Like, it just needs to go faster for me. But he was the managing partner of the office, an extremely successful guy, extremely capable guy, and total introvert. So I think you just have to look within and say, what are your strengths? You know, are your strengths going to be being the person who goes to the party or goes to the event and captures the attention of everybody? No, probably not, right? You might not be that person, but you've got other strengths you can do. You may be somebody who's going to be one of the most technical people around. You may be able to really pound home the actual documentation and the audit work. You may be the go-to resource at the firm from that perspective. I mean, there's just all sorts of ways to utilize your skills if you're an introvert rather than an extrovert. So I don't think it should hold you back at all. Definitely what I would say is what's probably holding you back more than anything is the belief that it holds you back rather than any actual problem with it. That would be what I would say.
Okay, cool. We probably have time for about one more question, and there have been tons that have come through. So for those of you that we just didn't get to your question here, Andrew and I will get together and get you answers. So really, really good questions. There's one that was related back to when you mentioned to, you know, get feedback, right, and the process around that. And I think going into a little bit more details around, yeah, should you ask for, how formal does it need to be, really? You know, should it be written documentation? You know, is there a format that you should follow, or just basically ask for, you know, verbal, tell me how I'm doing?
That depends on the firm or the company. So, you know, I worked at PwC. They required documentation for it to be a part of the consideration for your bonus, your raise, your promotion. And so I made sure that every team that I worked with for a week or more, and even sometimes less than that, like if I did a favor for somebody for a day, I'd be like, hey, can you just write me an email talking about that? I would totally appreciate it. And a lot of times they did, especially if I was close with them, they would. But you got to look at the company first. So I would say, A, look at the company and say, what does the company require? And if they require it in writing, then make sure you get as much of it in writing as possible. If the company does not require it in writing, then what I would recommend you do is go to the people that you worked with the most throughout the year, and you should be getting that informal feedback all the time. Like informal feedback, you should get all the time regardless of the company or firm, I don't care. But written feedback, you should get, if they don't require it, I would go to the top 3 or 4 people you worked with throughout the year, the most hours and time, and say, hey, you know, I'm trying to sort of do a annual review of myself, and one of the things I'd like to do is get some, you know, written feedback from people I work the most with. Would you mind just putting together a paragraph or two about your experience working with me? I want it to be honest. I'm not looking for, something that just talks about how great I am when, I sucked or something. But I would love it if you could just give me that. I'm sort of putting it together for myself. I'm going to share it with my mentor and sort of build my goals for the next year based on my performance this year. So again, just a paragraph or two, nothing crazy. And if you don't want to do it, no problem. But I would really appreciate it if you would. And I would do that. And then I would take that and I would put that with your summary of contributions. I'd give that to your coach. I'd give that to HR, because that right there, like when I was at PwC, it was required. So having all that written documentation is like, okay, well, everybody's got it. What do you have on top of that? That's why I did the summary of contributions. But if you're at a firm where nobody's got written feedback and you've got written feedback and you've got a summary of contributions, boom, you just like got yourself to the top of the list. Nobody else even submitted an application for the job and you're the only one that did. So, if you're at a firm that doesn't require it, you're sort of at an advantage, I'd say. But that would be the way I'd go about asking for it. And I'd be open to it and ask it as like a favor, as like something that you would really appreciate, but obviously it's not required for them to do.
Okay, cool. Yeah, this has been great, Andrew. I'm going to close, and actually there was one question that was related to something I wanted to mention. Someone asked if there's going to be any more podcasts at the Bean Counter, which you can talk about some of that, but I do want everybody to know that Andrew and I are going to continue working together in about another month. Andrew's going to join us again. I guess there's always a chance for schedules to change a little bit, but that's our plan. So we really think that this is a great partnership and that's coming together for you all. So, join us. And if you don't get emails directly, I mentioned signing up on Accounting Fly. That's one way. I send out notices of upcoming webinars to those who have signed up. So that's, beyond jobs, that's another reason for you to get signed up there, just so that I know that, to send you notifications, okay? And you can be assured that you'll get what we have on a weekly basis coming up. So, Andrew, if there's anything else, if you have a podcast plan for the Bean Counter that you want to mention real quickly, that'd be great.
Yeah, I love that. I've been getting a lot of questions about that. For those of you that don't know, I think we've got about 70 or 80 podcasts out there. Podcast is really just an hour, 30-minute or an hour-long audio. It's kind of like internet radio. Some people don't know, so you should go check that out. It's on iTunes. You just search for the Bean Counter in podcast section. Yeah, we will be putting out more podcasts. I've gotten a little behind on the podcast. I've been doing more of these webinars. I've been doing more things on YouTube. I've been doing more things on the blog, more things with email. And yeah, we will be putting out more podcasts. If you have any podcast recommendations or things that you'd like to hear, please reach out to me. Like I said, we've got about 70 or 80 out there already. So if you haven't listened to those, you should start there. And then, yeah, I'd love any recommendations you have in the future for podcasts. But everybody, thanks so much for coming on. We've got a lot of comments. I'm really excited about it. But I see there's still about 97 of you here remaining. So if you have not done it, go to thebeancounter.com/all-post/dreams. There's some amazing dreams over there. I'm so excited for you guys. I'm going to be actually replying to people that posted, and I'm going to be giving them a link or two to anything I've written or anything else across the internet that I think could help them on the path to their dreams. So if you want that, if you want me to respond and give you a helpful resource or two that could help you achieve that dream, please go ahead and comment there. You'll also be entered in a competition to win these 2 products. So again, thanks so much for coming out. If you have any questions, you can email me at andrew@thebeancounter.com. If I didn't get to your question today, email me there. And I look forward to seeing you all again soon. Thanks again, Deanna.
Perfect. Thank you. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.